512. Persian Gulf. The water is flat. A thin ribbon of moonlight cuts across the surface, and somewhere beyond the bow, the horizon dissolves into nothing. Inside the Combat Information Center of a United States Navy carrier strike group, the night watch holds its rhythm. Radar screens paint a familiar picture. Merchant lanes to the north, a scatter of fishing contacts drifting east toward the coast. The formation holds course at 18 knots through still, dark water. Then, the electronic warfare console chirps. One tone, short, sharp, and very specific. Not random interference, not a commercial signal. A frequency the system already recognizes. The EW operator leans forward. His eyes narrow at the waveform scrolling across the screen. He doesn't speak for 2 full seconds. Then he does. Possible emitter, bearing 018. The supervisor steps behind him immediately. The signal is faint. Low power, intermittent, consistent with a small airborne transmitter sending short-burst telemetry. On the radar display, the northern sector shows nothing. No return, no altitude tag, no speed vector. But the electronic signature is real, and it is being logged. The EW operator isolates the frequency, runs the library comparison. The classification takes 4 seconds. He reads the result quietly to the room. Data link emission, possible UAV, active guidance channel. The air search radar begins tightening its scan. The Spy-6 adjusts its beam angle, sweeping the northern sector at shorter intervals. For several sweeps, nothing resolves. Then one small return flickers at the absolute edge of detection range. Low altitude, very low. I'm barely clearing the radar clutter of the wave tops. Range 41 nautical miles, bearing 019. It disappears on the next sweep, then reappears. The radar operator marks it immediately. Air contact, track 1. Altitude estimated under 500 feet. Speed 85 knots. That profile is familiar. Not a missile, not a fighter jet. Too slow for both. Methodical, deliberate. The product of a one-way flight plan. High above the formation, the E-2D Hawkeye banking through its patrol orbit rotates its antenna across the northern horizon. The returns come in on its display first. Not one contact, not 2. The operator begins counting. 6 contacts, bearing spread from 015 to 022. Range 38 nautical miles, all of them low, all of them slow. All flying in a loose coordinated formation, closing on the strike group. 6 contacts become as the radar resolves finer spacing between the objects. The tracks stagger across roughly 4 nautical miles of front. The operator marks them sequentially, transmitting the track file directly into the fleet data network through Link 16. Aboard the carrier, the updated picture loads onto the tactical display without a single voice call required. Then, a second cluster resolves from the clutter, several miles behind the first group. 8 more contacts, range 44 nautical miles from the carrier, trailing the lead wave by approximately 3 minutes. Inside the CIC, the tactical officer studies the display. 16 contacts, 2 waves, both closing at 85 knots. Time to the outer engagement boundary is approximately 22 minutes. The classification console cross-references radar returns, infrared signature, and flight profile against the known threat library. The result appears across 3 screens simultaneously. Probable Shahed series. Single engine, low radar cross-section, loitering munition configuration. Designed to fly until they hit something. Nobody panics. Nobody raises their voice. But at the edge of the radar display, partially masked by the trailing edge of the first group, one contact sits differently. Altitude 4,200 feet. Speed 110 knots. Different airframe return, different thermal signature. The operator flags it before the supervisor asks. Anomalous contact, track 17, maintaining altitude, not Those don't circle, that is something else. The tactical officer pulls the track history on contact 17. The system has fragments of its flight path going back at least 40 minutes. It was airborne long before the swarm began moving, long before any... This drone has been orbiting, watching. A loitering munition doesn't need to watch. It only needs to arrive and detonate at the end of its fuel. But a targeting relay platform needs persistence. Its function is to stay high, stay positioned, and feed continuous radar and positional data back to something the strike group sensors haven't found yet. Something beyond the detection horizon. Something that hasn't launched. In the Persian Gulf, geography does not favor a defender. The waterway narrows heading north and east. Land masses on both sides. A drone swarm approaching from bearing 018 forces every ship in the formation to concentrate its sensors toward the north. Every fire control channel, every interceptor missile, every CIWS barrel, all of it is approaching from a completely different bearing, from the east, from beyond line of sight, using the swarm as a mask. That is the geometry someone has spent time designing. The captain reviews the full track picture on the main display. Platform holding at 4,200 feet to the north. A fleet-wide advisory across the tactical network. All ships in company, multiple air contacts, and defensive posture set, weapons, tight pending classification confirmation. The first wave is now 31 nautical miles out, closing at 85 knots. Time to the outer. The second wave trails by 5 nautical miles, roughly 3.5 minutes behind the first. The calculation is straightforward. If the strike group's interceptors are committed too heavily against Wave 1, Wave 2 arrives into a defense that's been thinned. That is not an accident, that is the plan. Inside the carrier, the general quarters alarm sounds, not an eruption, not chaos, just the steady, certain tone that shifts a warship from watchful to ready. At 5:24, the electronic warfare console changes. Not the drone data link frequencies from before. Something new, stronger. A surface search radar pulse sweeping from the east-northeast, bearing 087. The ED adjusts. The waveform becomes clear. Fire control radar, naval origin, Iranian classification. The library takes 3 seconds to confirm. C-802 guidance system, anti-ship missile targeting mode. The operator turns. Fire control radar active, bearing 087. That bearing has not. New tracks appear. Over the horizon launch signatures, hot, fast, already accelerating past Mach 0.9. Altitude 50 feet above the water. Sea skimming profile. Range from the strike group at the moment of launch, approximately 60 nautical miles from the east-northeast. The tactical officer reads the time to impact calculation the system generates instantly. Inside 4 minutes. He doesn't pause. Vampires inbound. Bearing 087. 3 tracks. Time to impact inside 4 minutes. All stations engage. 2 threats. opposite bearings, one designed to saturate, one designed to kill. The picture becomes complete in a way that makes everything that follows feel inevitable. The strike group responds in organized layers. No scrambling, no wasted motion. Just the cascade of a system. The first layer belongs to electronic warfare. From the carrier's hull, broadband jamming transmissions flood the data link frequencies used by the drone swarm's ground control command bands. Cutting the signal doesn't destroy them, but it severs their ability to adjust course. 4 contacts in the lead wave immediately deviate from their approach headings. Track 2 swings 40 degrees left. 2 more enter tight circles, no longer tracking the formation. GPS denied. 12 contacts remain on course. Bearing 015. Range 22 nautical miles. The Hawkeye feeds updated targeting. Control solutions load automatically into the escort destroyer's Aegis systems. The lead destroyer locks 4 contacts simultaneously. Vertical launch cells open along its forward deck. 2 SM-2 standard missiles fire in rapid succession. Flame and vapor rolling briefly across the bow as both weapons climb and roll into their intercept trajectories. At sea skimming altitude against small, low radar cross-section targets, even SM-2s are working near the edge of their designed envelope. But range is range, and 2 contacts blink off the display as the interceptors arrive. 10 remain in the first wave. Range 17 nautical miles. The second destroyer holds its CRAM launchers. The rolling airframe missile system is purpose-built for close threats inside 10 miles. Not yet. On the Hawkeye display, the remaining contacts begin fanning wider, spreading across 6 nautical miles of front. The tactic shifts the defensive burden. More spread means more fire control channels required to maintain simultaneous locks. It dilutes the engagement capacity of any single ship. It increases the probability that several weapons slip through toward the inner ring. 4 more SM-2 launches from the lead destroyer. A second salvo from the cruiser's vertical launch cells. Contrails crisscross the pre-dawn sky above the northern sector as interceptors angle steeply downward toward wave-top altitude. 3 more contacts disappear. 1 absorbs a proximity detonation, sheds debris, and keeps flying. 7 contacts remain. Range 11 nautical miles. Flying time that began as 22 minutes has compressed to 7 to 6. The sea between the first wave and the outer escort screen is narrowing fast. The remaining contacts have tightened back toward the carrier's projected position. They are adjusting course in real time. Track 17 is still orbiting at 4,200 feet. Still transmitting. It has not descended. It has not changed course. Range to the first wave, 8 nautical miles. CRAM batteries open fire from the carrier and from the cruiser simultaneously. Rolling airframe interceptors launch in overlapping salvos, the sky briefly busy with converging light. 2 contacts detonate in airbursts. A third cartwheels into the sea with its wings sheared off. A 4th absorbs a proximity kill and keeps closing. Damaged, still flying. Range 4 nautical miles. 4 contacts remain. The Phalanx CIWS on the carrier's starboard sponson pivots toward the lead contact. The tracking radar locks. The 6-barrel 20mm system spins up with a rising mechanical note. At 1,800 yards, it opens fire. Tracer rounds cross the gap in a fraction of a second. The lead drone disintegrates. A second burst walks right and catches the next contact as it closes from a slightly offset angle. 2 drones remain, both inside 2 miles. Both low, both fast. One reaches the water 600 yards off the carrier's bow. Its warhead detonates on surface impact. The explosion drives a column of white water 40 feet into the air. The concussion rolls through the hull. Lights flicker for a fraction of a second inside the CIC. The last contact in the first wave is destroyed by a third CIWS burst. Fragments scatter across the surface 400 yards off the starboard beam. First wave gone, 0 hull penetrations, but the second wave is already inside 14 nautical miles, and the 3 anti-ship missiles from bearing 087 are now less than 2 minutes from the outer defensive perimeter. Inside the CIC, the tactical officer faces both sectors of the display at once. To the left, the drone swarm is thinned, but still coming in its second wave. To the right, your 3 missile tracks cut across the eastern sector, sea skimming, fast, closing, bearing 087. He looks at the EW console. Contact 17 is still airborne, still at 4,200 feet, still transmitting. The electronic warfare operator has been running signal analysis on that transmission since the first alert. The result is on his screen now. The relay drone is not simply occupying a frequency. It is modulating its output in real time. Short burst, pause, short burst, longer burst, a pattern. The operator maps the transmission intervals against the missile tracking data on the adjacent display. The modulation pulses align with the missile's mid-course correction windows. The timing is too precise to be coincidental. Contact 17 is guiding the missiles, not the drones. The drones were never the primary weapon, and they were the mechanism that pulled every fire control radar, every SM-2, every CRAM round, every CIWS barrel toward bearing 015. They were designed to cost the strike group interceptors and attention, while the northern defensive perimeter engaged the swarm. 3 anti-ship missiles launched from a fast attack platform somewhere in the shallow eastern Gulf have been receiving continuous targeting corrections from a drone orbiting directly above the battle. The tactical officer processes all of this in roughly 4 seconds. Then he issues 2 orders simultaneously. Electronic warfare, all available power to bearing 087. Jam the guidance frequency now. Flight deck, 2 Super Hornets, immediate launch. Target contact 17. The jamming transmission begins within seconds. The EW systems rotate toward the east and flood the C802 guidance band with high-power broadband interference. On the tactical display, the 3 missile tracks wobble. 2 drift slightly off their approach vectors, course deviations of 3 to 5 degrees appearing in the track projections. The third holds its heading. It has either transitioned to terminal radar homing or its connection to the relay is more resistant to the jamming than the other 2. Range to the carrier on that third missile, 18 nautical miles. Time to impact approximately 80 seconds. On the flight deck above, 2 FA-18F Super Hornets are already staged. Catapults fire with the familiar burst of steam and pressure. Both jets launch in sequence and turn northeast immediately, climbing hard on afterburner. The relay drone is orbiting at 4,200 feet. It cannot maneuver, it cannot accelerate, it has no defensive systems. The only question is whether the fighters can reach weapon release range before the missiles reach the carrier. The lead pilot goes to full power. Altitude through 6,000 feet, through 10,000. His radar sweeps ahead. Contact 17 resolves instantly. Bearing 022. Range 19 nautical miles. low and slow by any fighter standard, a fixed orbit, a fixed altitude, a fixed target. Meanwhile, the second drone wave is inside 8 nautical miles. The destroyers are already engaging. CRAM salvos from both escorts send 3 contacts off the display. 6 drones remain in the second wave, pressing forward in a tighter cluster than the first wave used, all of them aimed at the same geometric point on the carrier's silhouette. CRAM fires again. 2 more gone. 4 remain. The carrier's portside phalanx opens fire. 3 of the 4 shred in the inner defensive ring, fragments falling into the sea close to the hull. The 4th closes to 300 yards before the system catches it. The drone detonates in the air, 250 yards from the port beam. Shrapnel rakes the water. No penetration, no fire. Second wave clear. Both drone waves neutralized, but the missiles are still coming. Range to the carrier on the third, undeviated track, 12 nautical miles. Time to impact under 50 seconds. The cruiser fires 2 ESSM interceptors toward the lead missile. Both evolved Sea Sparrows arc low, diving toward the sea-skimming threat at wave-top altitude. The first runs slightly high and misses. The second does not. The missile disintegrates in a sharp flash, 9 miles from the carrier's bow. Debris scatters across the surface. 2 missiles remain. Inside the Super Hornet, the lead pilot calls Fox 3. The A8M-120 launches from his outer wing station and accelerates toward Contact 17. The relay drone has no option to evade. The missile closes the distance in 11 seconds. The detonation appears on the Hawkeye's display as a brief scatter of static at bearing 022, altitude 4,200 feet. Contact 17 disappears from every screen simultaneously. On the EW console, the C-802 guidance signal from bearing 087 goes silent in the same second. Both remaining missiles lose their mid-course corrections at once. The one that had been drifting under jamming now loses its final stabilizing input. It pulls up sharply as its seeker searches for the carrier's radar signature in an electronically cluttered sky. So altitude climbs to 800 feet. The missile is searching, trying to find a clean return through the interference. The other missile holds its last known bearing, but without active guidance, it begins drifting south, 14 degrees off the carrier's position and widening. The cruiser fires 1 more ESSM at the climbing missile. The interceptor finds it at 6 nautical miles. The detonation briefly lights the pre-dawn sky above the eastern Gulf. The last missile drifts its full deviation, passes 4 nautical miles north of the carrier, and impacts open water. The explosion drives a white column 60 feet into the air. The shockwave rolls across the Gulf and fades. Then silence. 3 missiles, all 3 neutralized. Inside the CIC, the display clears track by track, until only the strike group's own symbols remain. The officer of the watch exhales once. No ceremony, just confirmation. All threats neutralized, all systems nominal. The engagement, from the first EW contact to the last missile impact, ran 9 minutes and 40 seconds. The captain studies the clear display for 3 seconds before his expression shifts. The missiles came from a launch platform. The relay drone received continuous targeting data from a ground station. Neither of those sources has disappeared, simply because the weapons they supported are gone. The captain does not wait for a recommendation. The Hawkeye crew is already working the triangulation. The C-802 fire control radar burst from bearing 087 lasted only seconds, but 3 ships in the formation received it at slightly different angles. The geometry, is run on the cruiser's intelligence system. The probable launch zone resolves to a 12 square mile box, approximately 68 nautical miles northeast of the carrier's current position. In a box that size, in the shallow eastern Gulf, very few vessels carry the deck space and equipment necessary to launch 3 anti-ship missiles simultaneously. The Hawkeye has been sweeping that sector since the first drone contacts appeared. There is one surface contact in that area, tagged as possible coastal patrol craft during pre-engagement tracking. Bearing 091. Range now 62 nautical miles, speed 11 knots. It has been sitting in the commercial traffic clutter along the Iranian coastline since before the first drone launched. That classification is no longer sufficient. The captain speaks without elaboration. Identify and engage. The 2 Super Hornets are already climbing back to altitude after the relay intercept. The lead pilot checks his fuel state. Sufficient for a strike. He rolls the aircraft east and descends toward attack altitude. His wingman follows without a word. The Hawkeye pipes targeting coordinates directly into their systems. Range to surface contact, 58 nautical miles. Time to weapon release, approximately 4 minutes at current speed. The MH-60R Seahawk on the carrier's deck is already turning rotors. It lifts clear within 90 seconds, climbing to 2,000 feet on a northeast heading. Its electro-optical and infrared sensor package activates as the helicopter crosses 10 nautical miles from the strike group. The sensor operator begins scanning the surface ahead, moving in a slow search pattern guided by the Hawkeye's coordinates. At 22 nautical miles, the target appears in the infrared feed, a gray hull, larger than a typical fast boat, but built on a similar platform. Launch rail structures visible amidships. The sensor operator marks the contact. Target confirmed. 1 vessel, crew on deck, launch rails still hot. The lead Super Hornet confirms radar lock on the surface contact. The targeting solution stabilizes. He selects the AGM-84 Harpoon from his weapons menu. Anti-ship mode. The missile drops from the wing and ignites a fraction of a second after release. It dives to sea-skimming altitude and accelerates, its active radar seeker sweeping the surface ahead. His wingman releases immediately behind him. Second harpoon away. On the surface, the Iranian vessel detects the incoming radar signature and begins a hard turn to port, not attempting to reduce its missile. The harpoon seeker has already resolved the contact's dimensions and projected course. The turn shifts the impact point by meters, not by enough. The first missile strikes near the vessel's bow. The detonation tears through the forward superstructure. Fire erupts across the forward deck and climbs the small mast. The second missile arrives 3 seconds later, striking just aft of the bridge. The detonation ignites stored propellant and remaining missile fuel. The entire midsection of the craft disappears in a violent, expanding fireball. The hull lists immediately to starboard and loses way. The Seahawk holds a 2-mile orbit around the burning vessel. The sensor operator records continuous high-resolution footage. The craft drifts to a stop. On deck, the lead pilot transmits his status. 1 surface contact destroyed, returning to ship. The captain receives the confirmation and nods once. Log it. The launch platform is gone. The relay platform is gone. The swarm is gone. And the missiles never touched the hull. 5:48. The fire on the distant hull is already visible from the carrier's bridge as a faint orange smear sitting just above the horizon. The smoke column climbs into still pre-dawn air and begins to drift east. Inside the CIC, the watchtower shifts from defensive to post-engagement procedure. Systematic, unhurried, exact. The Hawkeye continues its in alternating arcs. The picture holds clean. No additional air contacts. Or emissions on any monitored frequency. The electronic warfare systems confirm it. The spectrum is quiet. The destroyer flight the Seahawk lands and powers down. The sensor operator carries his recorded media directly to the intelligence officer waiting at the hatch. The footage is logged into the strike group's data network within 4 minutes of the helicopter touching down. Every second of the engagement, including the relay drone's orbit path and the missile approach geometry, is now stored and cross-referenced. Below the carrier's flight deck, weapons crews begin the reload cycle. Empty vertical launch cells are flagged. CRAM canisters are replaced. CIWS ammunition feeds are recharged. Every expended round is counted and recorded. The strike group's combat depth is assessed at each station and actively restored before the sun has fully risen. Inside the CIC, the electronic warfare officer begins the work that will define the value of the morning's engagement more than the intercept count. The raw signal data captured during the 9-minute 40-second window is queued for analysis. Every frequency the drones used, every burst transmission pattern from the relay platform, every emission characteristic of the C-802 fire control radar that initiated the missile volley. All of it preserved with microsecond-level timestamps. What makes the relay drone's data particularly significant is the transmission architecture it revealed. The burst intervals, the frequency hopping sequence, and the precise timing correlation between the relay's output and the missile's course corrections. This is not only information about this engagement, it is a structural map of the targeting system behind it, how the ground station synchronized with the relay platform, how the relay platform maintained contact with sea-skimming weapons below the radar horizon, exactly where in that chain an intercept can be inserted earlier next time, cutting guidance before the first drone even reaches 30 nautical miles. In the intelligence briefing room 2 decks below, the officer assigned to that analysis task is already at his workstation. The engagement is not fully cold yet, and he is already working forward. On the bridge, the captain stands at the forward windows as the Persian Gulf takes on its first pale amber light. The sea is exactly what it was at 5:12. Flat, light wind, perfect visibility. Nothing about the surface of the water from this view carries any evidence of what unfolded across the past 36 minutes. No debris at the carrier's position, no smoke above the hull, just open water and a formation of warships maintaining their course. He doesn't look relieved. He doesn't look triumphant. He looks forward, the way anyone looks when they understand that what just happened is not a story that ends this morning. Because in modern naval warfare, an engagement is never simply the moment contact is made and weapons are exchanged. The weapons are temporary. The data they generate is permanent. Every signal that was broadcast, every guidance protocol that was exposed, every tactical decision the attacking side made in those 9 minutes and 40 seconds, all of it now lives in the network. All of it will be there when those systems appear again on a radar screen. All of it will have already shaped the response before the first tone sounds on the EW console. The carrier continues forward at 18 knots. Its wake stretches white behind the hull. The escorts hold their positions. The Hawkeye banks in its slow orbit above the formation. Out here, the sea returns to the appearance of silence. But no one aboard the strike group mistakes appearance for reality. Because in modern warfare, data is the battlefield after contact. The drone swarm was designed to look like the threat. The relay platform was the actual pivot point. The missiles were the real weapon. And for 9 minutes and 40 seconds, the entire strike group's defense held, not because it reacted to everything it could see, but because it kept watching for what it couldn't. Would you break early, commit every interceptor to the swarm, or hold the line and trust the picture?